We're on Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. We're in the Mishnah. We're in the middle of the Amud, so today's going to be a little shorter since we, just for the sake of completion, we wanted to finish things off yesterday at the right place. So let's begin. We have a Mishnah that speaks about slaughtering. We've touched upon these ideas the past few Amudim, but the idea is that when you slaughter the animal, the Korban Pesach has to be done with the proper intentions. Okay, so Shchato Shalola Ochlav. If a person slaughters the animal for those who are not able to eat it, okay, so meaning you slaughter the animal and you have in mind someone who, again, is unable to eat, like physically unable to eat. Vishalolim nuyav, or you slaughter the animal for people who are not registered on the animal. Again, the way the Korban Pesach works is before Pesach, what would happen is one person would go ahead and be in charge. They'd buy the lamb, and everyone would be counted on the lamb. Some people say they have to actually make a kinyan in order for them to be counted. Others say that the owner, having them in mind at that time, gives them a kinyan, gives them a portion in the lamb. So some discussion as to whether or not you actually need an actual transfer of money or some form of a kinyan, like a lifting up of a pen or something physical, or simply the purchase of the team captain over here. I guess I'm going to cause match my own. Okay, let's go. The point is that there's like the person who's in charge. That person is able to go ahead and buy it for everyone else, even if his own money or her own money, and that would work. That would be sufficient. One way or another, there are people who need to be registered for the lamb, and if it's slaughtered for people who are not registered, then we're going to see it's going to be pasul la'arelim, or for uncircumcised men. Okay, let's have in mind for uncircumcised men, you have to be circumcised. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem. You have to have bris milah, batmeim, or for people who are tamei. Right, if you are tamei, you are not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. Pasul, if you had those people in mind when you slaughtered the Korban Pesach, it is invalid. Okay, la'ochlav, all these people. Again, what's the invalidation? The invalidation is all these people are not able to eat the Korban Pesach, right? In other words, all these different categories are people who are even, if you go ahead and slaughter for those people, it's no good because those people cannot eat it. However, limnuya la'ochlav v'shlo la'ochlav. Let's say you had in mind both people who could eat and people who can eat. Limnuya v'shelo limnuya, both for those who are registered and for those who are not registered. Limulim v'la'arelim, for people who have a bris milah and people who don't have a bris milah. Litzmeim l'tahorim, for people who are tamei and for people who are tahar. Kasher, it is valid. So as long as part of your intention is that it's going to be for people who are able to eat, the Gemara doesn't explain where this comes from. But
it's pretty logical. You would think that this would. Why would this?
It should also invalidate it. Right. So, why?
Because part of it's brown.
Part of it's good. Okay, fine, good. The Gemara's going to elaborate a little bit more to explain why, but the point is that, yes, bottom line is as long as some of the people eating it are going to be able to eat it, some of the people you have in mind are able to eat it and appropriate to be eating it, then it's going to be kosher.
Is it about intention or reality? So, like, let's say you actually have a kosher group, but your intention is for not.
It's about intention. I believe it's about intention because the bottom line is, even if let's say you had intention and then you feed it to the right people, right? It would still, right. So then it would still be invalid, right? Your intention, it's intention that revolves around a possibility of reality, right? Meaning, in other words, if you had in mind like a fictitious person, whatever, that wouldn't work. The point is that you're thinking about someone who is like potentially going to go ahead and eat it, who's not able to eat it. That's what invalidates it. Even if, again, the person can't eat it, by definition is not eating it, right? Nonetheless, it's still going to be invalid, right? Even though they never got around to not eating it because there's no not eating to do.
Right, but you have a registered group, though.
Right.
So they either are kosher or they're not.
No. So let's say you have a registered group. One of the people lost a teeth in the middle after the registering, right? So that's for la'ochlav shlo la'ochlav. There's a person there who's not able to eat it, right? You'd have to really go through an unregistering process to really do beforehand, right.
Well, what is the unregistering process?
So the truth is, I take that back. It doesn't really matter because that person, since they can't eat, and you'd shechted it for both people who could eat and people who can't eat, it doesn't really matter. If everyone in your group, including the owner, including the main person, all lose their teeth in the same moment, then that would be a problem. But practically, that you wouldn't have to unregister because as long as one person is able to eat from this group, you're good to go. Okay, shchato kodem chatzos. Let's say you slaughter it before midday. Okay, pasul. It's invalid. Why? Mishum shneimar bein harbaim. The pasuk says that the Korban Pesach has to be done in the afternoon. Shchato kodem l'tamid. As we spent a lot of time before, the Pesach is supposed to be slaughtered after the afternoon tamid. So let's say you did it before. Post facto, b'diavad kasher. It's kasher. Really, you're supposed to wait to do it after, but it's not invalid because as long as the Korban Pesach was done bein harbaim, even though you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of doing it after the second Korban tamid, but nonetheless it's still going to be kasher. Uvilvad, however, one important caveat: she'acher mimares b'damo ad shizar katamid. Okay, that another person. What happens in this case? Let's say you go ahead and you shechted the Korban. One person was very eager to get the Korban Pesach going, and they slaughtered the Korban Pesach, and they're like, wait, the Korban tamid of the afternoon was not brought. So what you should do, catch the blood in the bowl, and the Kohen should be mixing the blood. Okay, by mixing the blood, it prevents it from congealing. Okay, once you stop mixing, then it's going to congeal. So you need to keep mixing the blood until the blood of the carbon tamid of the afternoon is brought. Okay, so that does what you need to do, the second carbon tamid. Okay, and then you go ahead and you sprinkle the blood of the carbon pesach. Yeah, fine. However, if nizra kasher, but nonetheless, again, if the blood of the pesach was thrown before that of the carbon tamid, it still is b'diavad kasher. So again, doing it before chatzos, completely invalid, because the pasuk says it has to be brought bein arbaim. But there's a halacha that really the carbon tamid is supposed to come first, but that is not a invalidating obligation, and therefore, if by mistake you did the carbon pesach first, even if you did the whole process of carbon pesach first, it's still going to be kasher. Okay, Tanar Rabban, we have a brisa. Keitzad shelo ochlav. What does it mean when we say it's for those who are unable to eat? So what that means, as we've spoken about before, l'shem chola, l'shem zaken, it's for someone who is sick. They're sick to the point that they're unable to eat, or unable to eat matzah, or for someone who is ill that they can't, again, someone who can't eat it. Keitzad shelo limnuyav. What does it mean for those who are not registered on it? Nimnu alav chavura zo. So let's say you have a particular group who registered on this particular lamb, ushchat l'shem chavura acheres, but the person slaughtering it has the intention for the sake of another group. Okay, we're just spelling out what is, I think, at this point obvious, what these different categories mean. And now the Gemara asks, Mnani Mili, where's the source for this second halacha that has to be slaughtered for the sake of those who registered on it? Tanar Rabbanan was taught in a brisa, bim michsas. The pasuk says, according to the Pesach is taken according to the number of people. Michsas. Pesach nishchat el lemnuyav. You see from there, the pasuk says that the Pesach is taken, and that's understood, that the Pesach is taken with the intention for the number of people who were already registered on it. So says the Gemara, says the brisa, Yachol shchato shelo lemnuyav. You may have thought that a person slaughtered it for those not registered. Yehi ba'over al mitzvah v'kasher. Okay, you might be in violation of a mitzvah, but it'd still be valid. Right? In other words, when I say, so the Torah says, do it for the people that are registered. Okay, fine. So I know I'm supposed to do that. But let's say I don't. There's two possibilities. One possibility is, I made a mistake, I did something wrong, I did an avera, I was in violation of an assay, but it's still post facto okay. And there's another possibility, which is, it's no good. So that's the Gemara's clarifying over here. You may have thought that if a person goes ahead and slaughters it for those who are not registered on it, you'd be considered like one who transgressed a commandment, but it's still valid. Okay, Tamalomar, b'michsas tachosu, hakasuv shana alav la'akev. So the Tanna Kama holds that because it says to the number, shall you count, and now emphasizes the counting more than once, emphasizing that if you don't do it, it's completely invalid. It's not just that you did something wrong, right? Sometimes you could do something against the Torah, but whatever you're doing is still a valid action, right? Over here we're saying that it's completely invalid. The Karban Pesach is not valid, and we see that from the repetition of the words. Okay, Rabbi gives a different source. Lashon sursi hu. He says this term is, and he's translating Aramaic, but really sursi, it means like Syriac, like Syrian. I'll come back to that in a second. But the point is that this term tachosu is actually an Aramaic word. Ka'adam shom lechavero kos li talazed. The term tachosu actually means slaughter, and therefore Rebbe's saying it's not because of a repetition of the word, but when it said tachosu, which you were translating as counting, that's not what it means. What it actually means is you have to slaughter it for the number of people that you counted. So he says it's explicit in the Torah, right? Tanna Kama is saying it's count. It says it twice to show you that it's important, and if you don't do it, it's invalid. Rebbe says no, the word tachosu is actually an Aramaic word, and since it's an Aramaic word, then since it's an Aramaic word that means to slaughter, what the pasuk is actually saying is you have to slaughter it according to those who counted, and obviously if you don't, then the slaughtering is invalid. It's an interesting thing so fine. Syriac, the reason they translate, the Aramaic language was a language that was actually one of the most common language in the entire region, not just in what we'll call Padan Aram and areas like that, but rather Aramaic was spoken virtually everywhere in that area, and there was different dialects. So Surya is a particular dialect, Syriac is a particular dialect of Aramean. Thank you, Dr. Rabbi Henry Abramson, for this little note. But some of the Mefarshim actually point out a fascinating thing. You'll find, so the truth is throughout the Torah you sprinkle Aramaic words, but one of the Achronim points out. Sorry? Igar Sadus. All right. Well, there it's literally talking about a location, which is Aramaic. True. But some point out that maybe you'll find. I haven't done the study to say if this is accurate, but that there'll be when is this passage being given? It's specifically being given while the Jewish people are still in Mitzrayim before they leave. So what's the language that? Keep in mind, where are their ancestors from? At the early, right? Their ancestors are from that era, that region, right? Although we say that Avram spoke some form of Ivris, some form of Hebrew, but his mother language was most certainly internally Aramaic, right? So before the Jewish people leave Mitzrayim, there's going to be more of that Aramaic mixed into their into their conversation, and therefore it actually was easier to understand why there'd be an Aramaic term specifically with the group leaving Mitzrayim, because that's before there'll be the the people pushing for more of we'll speak Hebrew only Lashon HaKodesh, but before that, while they're still in Mitzrayim, it'd be quite common, presumably, to speak a lot more Aramaic, even though we have a tradition they spoke some Lashon HaKodesh, etc., but the idea being that you'll find more Aramaic there. Okay, it's a fascinating possibility. Okay, says the Gemara further. Ashkechan Shalom Nuyav. So we found a source that you need to have people who are registered on it, and if not, it's going to be invalid. Says the Gemara, 61a3, Shalola Achlav Minalan. Where do you know the same halacha is so for slaughtering for those who are unable to eat it? So the Gemara answers, Amakra, the pasuk says, Ish lefi achlo tachosu. Each person according to eating, to what he eats, shall you count. So you see the word to what he eats, shall you count, juxtaposed one to another. Iskish ochlin limenuyin. So the pasuk talks about those who eat side by side with those who are registered on it, and therefore we would say the same halacha applies, right? That just like the halacha is that if you slaughter it for those who are not registered, it's no good, so too if you slaughter only for those who cannot eat, it is not going to be good. Okay, says the Gemara further, 61b1, shchato lemulin, if you slaughter the Pesach for the sake of people who have a bris milah, amenas shiskaprbo arelim bizrika, with the intention that when you sprinkle the blood, you're going to have in mind people who are not circumcised. I know it says the word forgiven, but the Mefarshim is saying that that's a loose term. What that means basically is like this. We have a group of people, and we're shechting the Karban Pesach, and while I'm the person slaughtering Karban Pesach, I have in mind that in addition to my group of circumcised people, I'm going to, and which I'm having in mind for the Shechita, I say, when I do the sprinkling, I'm going to have in mind someone who is uncircumcised. Again, bizarre story, doesn't matter. We're trying to figure out the details. So that's the case. The guy's slaughtering it for the right people, his group of Jews, who have the men who have a bris milah, and he's having in mind that when he gets to the sprinkling, when he gets to the Zrika Saddam, then he's going to have in mind people who are not circumcised. Okay, what's the halacha in this case? Okay, Rav Chisda Amar Pasal. Rav Chisda says it's no good. Rabba Amar Kasher. Rabba says it is valid. Rav Chisda Amar Pasal. Rav Chisda says it is no good. Yesh machsheves arelim bizrika. Okay, because the intention of uncircumcised people regarding the throwing of the blood is going to be effective even during the time of the shechita. In other words, really what's happening is this is a little bit weird. We already touched upon a case like this earlier, and that is that normally we have different stages of the offering. We have stage number 1 is you're slaughtering, then you're catching the blood, then you're sprinkling, then you're bringing the blood. Sorry, then you're sprinkling. Right. So each stage we know that if you have an invalid thought at that stage, it's going to invalidate it. But what if during stage 1 I'm thinking about an invalidation for stage 2? Does my invalid thought of stage 2 impact what I'm doing right now? Meaning, maybe when I get to the Zrika, let's just fail at this case a little bit more. At stage 1, I'm slaughtering, and I have in mind the right group. But I'm also thinking I'm going to sprinkle for the wrong group when I get to sprinkling. Then when I get to sprinkling, I only sprinkle for the right group, right? So the question is, did my thought during shechita, during slaughtering, did my thought during slaughtering about sprinkling impact the entire carbon? That's the question, right? So Rav Chisda says, yes, my thought of the uncircumcised during sprinkling is effective, and therefore, meaning it's a valid, invalidating thought. I know it's a effective, invalidating thought. Rabba Amar Kasher Imachsheves Arelim Bizrika. No, the fact that I'm thinking right now about uncircumcised people during the throwing of the blood is not effective. Okay, we're gonna have to go into the source for all this, which will be our discussion tomorrow, and talk about bris milah. We have a couple of extra few minutes. Sorry.
Why would, if you have the wrong intention at something that doesn't apply at that moment, what's the reasoning that you think it would invalidate? I mean, it's...
I'm not sure, meaning at the end of the day, I'm thinking an invalid thought. Who says my invalid thought has to be relevant to the invalid thought of what I'm doing right now?
Well, there'd have to be a reason to assume that it wouldn't, right?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I could hear both ways.
We assume that if you're doing it at the right time, in the right place and everything,
right?
Like we were mentioning briefly yesterday about,
right.
You don't have
but let me say it differently. They're connected, right? It's all one flow, right? Meaning there are 1, 2, 3, 4, they all flow into one another. So it's one process. I'm starting to think now about some invalidation that happens then. So granted, I'm not up to that stage, but I'm involved in the process, and in the process, I'm already having invalid thoughts. So granted, I'm not doing that particular thing right now, but it's still an invalid thought, right? I agree. If I had an invalid thought about Zrika before I slaughter the animal, it's meaningless. But I've started the process, so I'm in the middle of the process. Granted, my brain is too fast for my actions. Whatever. The point is that it's still there. I'm doing the same thing, and I'm thinking a little bit early, but it's still part of the actions.
But we should have the goal here should be to try to keep it kosher as to try to the assumption should be it's kosher.
I don't know.
If you're doing everything that you should be, we shouldn't be looking for a way to make it possible. Right? The goal is you want it to work.
It's not like looking for done. We're trying to know what's kosher or not. You know, as one of my Rav Stav, Rabbi and KBY used to say, you know, Gemara is made for basically for like crooks and jerks. You know, like basically like all these cases, like this guy, like what is this guy doing, right? Whatever. It's not me. Like there's not a normal case, but I don't know. Like I don't know what we're trying to look for. We're trying to look if it's kosher. So we have to. Is this not a valid thought? I'll just mention something quickly from Rav Tzadok. Rav Tzadok says that he points out the Karban Pesach, and truth is this is relevant. You know, you asked me for the yesterday about like this is relevant to what's it called? To regular Pesach that we have right now without the Beis Hamikdash, and that is the only mitzvah that we actually have a bracha during. In other words, for eating. In other words, when else do we have a bracha for eating something? Right? All other karbanos, you bring a shlamim, you don't make a bracha on a shlamim. You make Karban Pesach, you make a bracha on eating a Karban Pesach. Same with matzah, right? What other food do you make a bracha on it? And he says there's something about there's no bracha that you make on food that is a mitzvah oriented food that's uniquely ala chilas, whatever. Right? We have like that we eat in a sukkah, but there's no food that we're actually eating that is a bracha on. And the Rav Tzadok explains that the idea of Pesach, the idea of eating really, is that what we're trying to do is basically, that whenever we eat, eating is really that connects body and soul. It actually connects our soul to this world, right? Because if we don't eat, we're not going to be around. We need to eat, right? The idea, by the way, that neshama yiseir, that we have an extra soul on Shabbos, and therefore, as Rashi very almost bizarrely says, and that's why we eat more, which everyone's like, what in the world is that? Like, that sounds like the silliest, joke. But the point is, because you have a bigger soul, you need to connect more. There's more to bring to this world, to connect to this world. The idea is that Pesach is really when we're bridging, and we're making we're bringing our neshama here, we're bringing our soul, we're actually, it's the beginning of our souls, as a collective, it's the beginning of our neshama's, existence. And therefore there is this emphasis on eating, and in doing so we're kind of drawing down our neshama and making it really a part of ourselves, and that's why there's such an emphasis on eating and holy eating, specifically on Pesach. Okay, pick up tomorrow.